I still remember the exact moment my world flipped, not when I lost everything but when I saw her on the cover of that tech magazine, grinning like she'd built the empire with her own bare hands. It was my idea, my code, my pitch deck, my sleepless nights. My name's Jason Patel. I'm a software engineer by trade, entrepreneur by obsession. Grew up in Jersey, first-gen Indian-American kid who was always expected to follow the safe route, doctor, maybe engineer if I had to get creative. But me, I was always chasing something bigger. I didn't want to work for the dream, I wanted to build it. I met Lena my second year out of college. She was magnetic, part artist, part strategist, part chaos. She said all the right things. Let's build something real, something people need. We were both broke, caffeinated, and wired on ambition. We started dating before we even wrote our first line of code together. It all felt perfect, until at WASN single quotes. We had this idea, this app that would disrupt niche freelance platforms, AI-powered gig matching, but with emotional intelligence baked into the algorithm, something no one else was doing. I spent 6 months coding every night, feeding it data, tweaking the logic. Lena handled branding, networking, and pitching at local startup mixers. She was always better with the crowd. I stayed in the shadows, letting the product speak, but something shifted. She started taking more calls alone, locking her laptop when I walked in investor stuff, she'd say, brushing me off. I wanted to believe her. Hell, I needed to believe her. We were partners in business and love. Why would she lie? The night she left, it was quiet. No fight, no warning, just a note by the coffee maker. I need space. Don't call, gone. And with her my GitHub login, my mockups, even the damn prototype server access. At first I told myself she'd come back, that there was some explanation, some temporary madness. But 2 months later, there she was, front and center on Tech Pulse Weekly, pitching her startup. Same idea, same features, even the tagline, smarter, work, human connection. I felt the air get sucked out of my lungs. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was erased. And the worst part, she looked proud, like none of it mattered, like I'd been a stepping stone. That night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment with a bottle of whiskey and one single burning question. How do you take back what someone stole from you when the whole world believes it was theirs all along? I didn't know the answer then, but I was about to find out, and I was going to make damn sure she saw me when I did. After that magazine cover, I spiraled. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face lit up by stage lights, heard her voice, pitching my lines, watched the audience nod in admiration like she was some genius visionary. It was like living in a parallel universe where I didn't exist. For a while, I just shut down. I stayed holed up in that dingy apartment, curtains closed, phone off, job applications half-written and discarded. I kept rereading our old messages, our shared Google Docs, even the stupid Slack threads. I was searching for something, some sign, some warning, something I had missed. That's when I noticed it. A week before she left, Lena had asked for access to a backup folder I'd kept private, the raw prototype code, the early drafts I didn't want anyone touching yet. I had hesitated, told her I'd clean it up first. She'd insisted, said she needed it for a last-minute investor pitch. I had caved it. Stupid. So stupid. The timestamp didn't lie. She had cloned everything, not just that folder, everything. Source files, system architecture, diagrams, even my notes on machine learning, refinement, all downloaded days before she disappeared. And suddenly, things started making sense. That investor call she took in the hallway, probably her first pitch without me. That late night walk she said she needed to clear her head, probably the night she registered the company under her name, but at that point, it was still suspicion. I didn't have any legal proof, no signed NDAs between us. No IP protections, just a shared dream, and the blind trust that she'd never got me from the inside. I tried calling her once, just once, straight to voicemail, so I started watching her interviews, every single one she did. I kept a notebook by my laptop, scribbling, notes, timestamps, anything. I picked apart her words like I was solving a murder. She always danced around the technical stuff, said the product was built by a team, powered by intuition, deeply collaborative. I nearly laughed. She couldn't write a for loop without Google, and now she was talking about neural clustering like she invented it. But it wasn't funny, it was infuriating. I went to her company's website, clicked through the product demo, and there it was, clear as day, my old user flow. The same onboarding prompts I had spent weeks perfecting. Even the bug in the second-tier filter, something I never had time to fix. She didn't just steal the idea. She launched with my flaws still built in. That's when it hit me like a gut punch. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. She hadn't just broken my heart. She had built her new world using the pieces of mine. I remember sitting at my desk, hands shaking, eyes burning. I clicked view source on her landing page, scrolled through the HTML, and there, tucked away in some unmodified comment strings, was my signature variable naming format. It was like seeing my fingerprint on a weapon. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up, heart pounding with this cold, angry clarity. She had taken everything I built, my vision, my labor, my future, and now she was being celebrated for it. The media adored her. Investors were throwing money at her. Users were calling her platform revolutionary. Every post, every headline, every photo op felt like another nail in the coffin of my silence. But something inside me snapped. Not in a reckless way. Not in some melodramatic burn it all down kind of way. No, it was a quiet snap. The kind that signals resolve because I realized something important that night. Lena might have stolen my work, but she couldn't steal my mind. She didn't have the obsession I had, the technical hunger, the craftsmanship. She copied what I had done, but she couldn't outdo me. Not unless I let her. So I started rebuilding. Not out of hope, not even out of revenge yet. Just survival. Just to prove to myself that I wasn't done. I pulled up the backups she didn't have access to. The versions I'd never pushed to the cloud. I started writing again, line by line. Cleaning code, refactoring, improving every little piece she'd misunderstood or mangled. Every keystroke was therapy. Every bug I squashed felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul, but the more I worked, the more questions festered. How far had she gone? Was she alone in this? Or did someone help her pull it off? And most of all, what would happen if I didn't just survive this but came back stronger? Because a storm was brewing and I was finally ready to step into it. The real proof came on a Thursday. I was halfway through rebuilding the core engine of the platform, refining the matching algorithm Lena had butchered, when an old friend from our early pitch sessions messaged me out of the blue. Hey man, didn't know you were back in the game. Just saw Lena's app trending. It looks a lot like the prototype you showed us at the co-working hub. Y'all still working together? Still working together. I stared at that sentence for a long time, bile rising in my throat. I called him immediately. Jay was a UX designer. We used to bounce ideas off of one of the good ones. Honest, loyal, allergic to drama. We hadn't talked in almost a year. Jason, he said, surprised. Man, it's been a minute. I just assumed you and Lena were still tight. She's been showing people this slick pitch deck with both your names on the timeline. I froze. Wait, what timeline? Jay pulled up an old email chain and forwarded it to me. Attached was a presentation Lena had used back when she was still fundraising in the early months. Sure enough, there it was. Our original roadmap, word for word. Only now, her name was plastered across every milestone. Mine, completely erased, but she had slipped. In one corner slide, during the development phase, she referenced initial coding done by co-founder JP, my initials. She hadn't even bothered to change it. She had lied to everyone, but not carefully enough. That was my break. I dug in. I pulled up every shared drive, every Dropbox link we'd used. I checked version histories, metadata, timestamps. All of it told the same story. Lena had been exporting files, quietly duplicating our work, and relabeling everything. She didn't just steal the idea, she had built a whole history around it. A fake creation myth. But the biggest find came from an old shared Google Sheets doc, a budget tracker we used during the early bootstrap phase. I hadn't looked at it in ages, but buried in one tab was a list of potential expenses, and right there in cell C47 was a payment entry labeled UX consultation, J $1,000. The same J who thought we were still co-founders. That invoice had my initials next to it, marked approved by JP. She had used it. My authorization, my name. I screenshotted everything at this point. It wasn't just about being hurt, it was about being smart. I didn't have the money to sue her outright. She had venture capital now, a PR team, lawyers. If I came at her guns blazing, I'd be swallowed in a week. So I planned, quietly, carefully. First, I made a backup of every file, every email, every document we had ever created together. I cataloged everything chronologically. I even hired a cheap online legal service to notarize timestamps. Then I started talking. Not publicly, not online. I went back to the people who knew us both. Angel investors, early mentors. I told them what happened, not in a bitter, vengeful way, but calm, fact-based, methodical. Some were shocked, some weren't. She did seem polished, one investor told me. Almost too polished for someone with no technical background. They weren't all sympathetic, but a few listened. One even asked for my prototype. He said he'd always liked my version better, more human, he said, less corporate. Those conversations gave me strength. Lena was winning the spotlight, but I was winning something quieter: credibility, respect, momentum. At the same time, I kept improving my app. I renamed it, rebranded it, rebuilt the parts that had been clunky the first time around. I made it sleeker, faster, more accurate. I tested it with real freelancers, gathered feedback, improved UX. I didn't have millions in funding, but I had truth on my side. And something else Lena had underestimated. I could outwork her, and while I was doing all this, I kept a close watch on her startup. I set Google alerts. I watched her job postings, her app updates. I tracked her investor rounds like a hawk. One day, I noticed something curious. She was hiring a lot of back-end devs. Red flag. That usually meant trouble under the hood. Maybe she couldn't scale. Maybe she'd run into the same bug I had hit before, fixing it in my new build. I downloaded the latest version of her app and ran a few stress tests. It crashed consistently at exactly the same point mine used to before. I rewrote that part of the code, and then I knew she hadn't just stolen my old prototype. She'd stopped building once she had the spotlight while I was grinding in silence. She was coasting on stolen momentum. That's when the real shift happened in me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. I had the proof. I had a better product. I had allies whispering in the right ears. And most importantly, I had time on my side. I didn't need revenge. I just needed one opportunity to step out of the shadows, and when it came, I was going to take it because Lena hadn't just stolen from me, she had underestimated me, and that was her biggest mistake. The opportunity came wrapped in silence. It started with a LinkedIn notification, one of those random, automated blurbs. People are looking at your profile. Normally I'd ignore it, but something about the timing made me curious. I clicked. A recruiter from Ardent Capital had viewed my profile. I knew the name. Everyone in tech did. They were sharks in suits, brilliant, brutal, and always one step ahead of the next unicorn, and they'd recently invested in Lena. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. They were either doing due diligence or digging because something was off. So I took a chance. I messaged the recruiter. Simple, direct. I believe you're backing a startup founded on stolen IP. I have the proof. To my surprise, he responded within an hour. Come in tomorrow, he wrote. No promises, but bring everything. I didn't sleep that night. I laid out every document, every time-stamped email, every screenshot. I rehearsed my timeline like it was a courtroom drama. By morning, I was running on caffeine and vengeance. Ardent's offices were carved out of steel and glass in downtown Manhattan, cold, clinical, intimidating. A place where dreams either exploded or got quietly buried. I walked into the conference room for suits. 1 woman, 3 men, all of them watching me like I was either a whistleblower or a liar. Jason Patel, one of them, said, "You have 30 minutes. Impress us." So I did. I started at the beginning. How Lena and I met, the early prototype, the Google Docs, the sleepless nights. I showed them my code, the GitHub history, the design files with my annotations. I laid out her magazine quotes next to my original project notes. I pointed out the variable strings she never changed. I showed how the crash in her current version matched the exact line of code I had fixed after she left. They didn't interrupt, they just listened. By the end, the woman she introduced herself as Anya, senior partner, leaned forward and said quietly, "We had our doubts. She's charismatic, but vague. Always skating around the technicals." One of the men added, "We're preparing for a Series B. We can't have skeletons coming out mid-round." That's when I made my move. I pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. "Everything's on here. Emails, code comparisons, IP timelines. You want to avoid a scandal? You don't have to drop her. Just buy her out. Merge the platform, take over the tech. I've already rebuilt it. It's better, scalable, secure. You don't need Lena to make this work." There was a beat of silence, then Anya asked, "And what do you want, Jason?" I met her eyes. "I want her out. I want the company, not just a job. I want control." It was bold, maybe reckless, but it was the truth. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Give us a week." I walked out shaking. It felt like I had detonated something, but it wasn't over yet. 3 days later, Lena called me. I hadn't heard her voice in almost a year. "You really couldn't just let it go, huh?" she said, bitter and breathless. "You had to go behind my back." I smiled, not out of joy, but because I realized something in that moment. She was scared. "I didn't go behind your back, Lena," I said quietly. "I went through the front door. The same one you slammed shut on me." "You think you've won," she hissed. "You think they're gonna just toss me aside for you? They already have the real product," I replied. "You gave them a pitch deck. I gave them proof." There was a pause. Then she laughed, cold and broken. "You were always too soft. That's why I left. You didn't have the guts for the game." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The next day, Ardent released a vague press statement. "We're thrilled to announce a strategic acquisition and leadership transition within the creative freelance platform space." Lena's name was nowhere in it, or mine was. They didn't just buy out her company. They merged it under my product. I walked into the same office where she used to pitch investors, only this time I had the floor. Same city, same industry, same dream, only now it was mine. And Lena, she disappeared from tech Twitter. No interviews, no posts, no more staged conference photos and borrowed blazers. Just silence. But I didn't celebrate. Not really. Because winning didn't feel like revenge, it felt like redemption. The idea she stole, I turned it into something real. Not to destroy her, but to rebuild myself. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't end when you win, it ends when you remember who you are and who you never needed to become. It happened faster than I thought it would. Within days of the acquisition announcement, whispers turned into headlines. Founder ousted in quiet restructuring. Questions arise over original IP of former CEO. Insiders claim early tech was built without proper attribution. No names were mentioned, not at first. But in this industry, people read between the lines. Lena was no longer a darling of the startup world. She was a cautionary tale. Investors pulled their support. Partnerships quietly evaporated. Those glossy interviews vanished from websites. The startup scene moved on fast and without mercy. I kept my head down through it all. No interviews, no victory lap. But the silence spoke volumes. She reached out one last time. An email, short, unapologetic. You got what you wanted. Don't pretend you're any better. I stared at it for a long time before closing the tab. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. The irony is, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt ... tired, relieved, maybe, but also strangely hollow. I had spent so long fighting to prove I was right, to prove I mattered, that when the dust settled, I didn't quite know what to do with the quiet. Ardent gave me full creative control of the product. I hired a team, one I trusted. I built things the right way this time. Transparent, collaborative, fair. No shortcuts, no stolen code. Just late nights, honest work, and the kind of grind I had missed more than I realized still. Some nights I'd catch myself staring out the window wondering how it could have gone differently, if she had stayed, if we had done it together, the way we dreamed. But that's the thing about dreams built on trust. They only stand if both people are holding them up. I never got an apology, but I got something better. I got the truth. I got my life back. And more importantly, I got to rebuild it on my own terms. The people who mattered, mentors, old friends, even a few early skeptics reached out quietly to say they were proud, that they'd seen what happened, even when they didn't know how to help. That meant more than any headline ever could. Lena, for all her brilliance, played a short game. She bet on hype. I bet on the long road, on skill, on persistence, and now I was building something real, not just a company, but a legacy. And that was something no one could ever steal again. It's funny how quiet success can be. There's no dramatic music, no red carpets, no standing ovation when you finally put your life back together. Just the steady rhythm of progress, the quiet satisfaction of doing what you were meant to do, this time on your own terms. A year after the acquisition, I moved out of that cramped studio apartment where everything had started and nearly ended. I traded in the cracked drywall and water-stained ceiling for a small but sunlit loft in Brooklyn. Nothing flashy, just enough space to think, build, and breathe. The company we rebuilt, not hers, ours, was finally profitable. We had a growing user base, positive press, real traction. More importantly, I had a team I trusted, a product I believed in, and a purpose that ran deeper than ego or revenge. I still wake up early most mornings, not because I have to, but because I want to. I walk to the office before the city wakes up, grab coffee from the same corner shop, say hi to the barista who now knows my name. That simple ritual keeps me grounded. That the first few months after the transition were rough. Cleaning up her mess, rewriting back-end systems, restoring team morale, rebuilding our public image wasn't glamorous. But it was necessary, and I tackled it the way I did everything else, piece by piece. One honest decision at a time. Some of our early users reached out, not for support tickets, but for praise. Your new version feels thoughtful, it just works better now. I didn't realize how clunky it was before, and each message felt like a quiet validation, not just of the work, but of me. No longer measure success in dollars or downloads. I measure it in peace. In knowing I didn't cut corners. In knowing that I could have gone scorched earth, could have burned her reputation down, but chose to let the truth do the heavy lifting. I don't think about Lena much anymore. Not out of bitterness, just disinterest. She faded into the background, and I let her. Whatever she's doing now, I hope she's learning the lessons I had to learn the hard way. That shortcuts always cost more later, and betrayal, no matter how clever, eventually collapses under its own weight. If I'm honest, the betrayal didn't just change my career, it changed me. I became sharper, wiser, a little less trusting maybe, but not cynical. I learned how to protect what I build, not just with contracts and logins, but with discernment, with the ability to say no, to set boundaries, to walk away from charisma wrapped in ambition. Most of all, I found my voice, not the kind that needs applause, the kind that doesn't need anyone else's permission. People see the headlines and think the story was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about returning to myself. And now, every time I walk into that boardroom or pitch a new idea, or see someone use a feature I built from scratch, I am reminded of something simple, something powerful. They can steal your work, they can steal your time, they can even steal your name for a while, but they can't steal your growth. And once you've taken back who you are, there's not a soul on this earth who can take that from you again. I used to think betrayal was the worst thing that could happen to a person, that when someone takes what you poured your heart into and walks away with it smiling, thriving, acting like you were never part of the story, that it breaks something in you permanently. But now, I see it differently. Betrayal doesn't break you, it reveals you. It shines a brutal light on who you are, without the comfort of trust, without the illusion of loyalty, without the crutch of someone else's validation. And that version of youth, one that rises from the wreckage, bruised but unbowed, that's the person you were always meant to become. I didn't want this path. I didn't choose the heartbreak, the silence, the humiliation, but I did choose what came next. I chose not to let it end me. I chose to keep building. I chose to believe that truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way to the surface. And if there's one thing I've learned, one message I'd pass on to anyone out there who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or outright stolen from, it's this: let them laugh. Let them think they've won. Let them enjoy the spotlight while it lasts, because real power isn't in being seen first, it's in lasting and showing up day after day, doing the work they thought you couldn't, in staying silent when you could scream, planning when you could retaliate, growing when they expect you to crumble. You don't have to chase revenge, you just have to keep becoming. And one day, when the world circles back around, when your name stands taller than theirs, not because you tore them down, but because you rose, you'll realize the victory was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you were always right, always enough, always capable, even when no one else saw it. So if you're out there holding your broken blueprint, watching someone else profit off your pain, don't fold. Rebuild quietly, patiently, brilliantly, because someday, when the dust settles, you won't just have the last word, you'll have the whole story.